Hey folks, today we're going to look in on my 57-gallon cube, or my column tank upstairs. This tank's been around a long time. It's probably the oldest tank that's been set up and been on this channel, that got set up on this channel, and is still going. We're going to talk a little bit about this tank, a little bit about longevity of tanks. It's all coming up right after this. Hey YouTube, this is Pecktec, and I'm back for another update slash let's talk about something video with one of my aquariums. This is a Marineland 57-gallon cube. It was one of those PetSmart specials that I picked up on a Black Friday event many years ago. I think I got the tank and stand for this, which came with a really crappy light, but I got the tank and stand set up for this for about, I want to say $250, $275. It didn't come with a filter. It's had a couple of different filters on it over the years. The newest thing I've got now is the Awasa. It's got the Awasa canister filter I set up. I guess I set up that close to the end of last year. I did an unboxing for that filter just last year. I actually did at least one thing wrong I'm real embarrassed about, but yeah. Anyway, it's been a pretty good filter. But I want to start talking about what's in the tank right now. Right now, most of the fish that are in here are sort of refugees. That is, they came from the 55 dirted tank that I took down. I don't know if you guys have been with me a while. I'm referring to things that have happened just like maybe the past year or so. So if you're new to the channel, you can look back. At some of the older videos and see. Right now I'm putting out quite a lot of videos, but up until maybe a month or two ago, I was just doing one a week, and sometimes I would even skip a week. So I really don't have an enormous library like some fishy folks do of videos to reference, but I had a 55-gallon dirted tank in what is now my game room until I think sometime last year when I took it down. And most of the fish that were in that aquarium came here. A bunch of the fish that were in this aquarium went to the 210 downstairs. And that's kind of why it's handy to have a wide variety of tanks set up that are, more or less, have different stocking levels. I think I explained last week that my stocking level on the 27-gallon cube was pretty low, mostly because I'm anticipating moving fish to it very soon. And the fish that I'm probably going to move to it are in here. But let me tell you a little bit about what's inside here. At least one of the fish inside here is a rainbow, which I will be catching. I've vowed to catch today or this week at some point and add it with its brothers and sisters downstairs. It's one of the offspring of my rainbow fish that are in the 210. And since that baby, this was kind of the runt, and it was maybe a little bit faster than the other ones. So it's gotten to live in here a little bit longer than its siblings did. But seeing as how the brand new baby just kind of appeared down in the 210 and hasn't been eaten by Mr. Tubes right away, I can assume that maybe this one will be safe. I think maybe the rainbows are probably too fast for him. So I'm going to go ahead and take this guy and I'll add him downstairs. I've also got a really beautiful Pandagara, and it's one of the first Pandagaras that I got. So he's my oldest one. I totally forgot to mention the Pandagara last week in my 27-gallon cube video. They are the most adorable algae eating or surface rasping fish that you're going to see. And if you look at it like comparing it to an ancestral catfish, a bristlenose catfish, it's definitely the cuter cousin. I don't think their genuses are related at all. But they have similar properties. They're obviously kind of river fish in that they have this really smooth profile. Now there's fairly low flow in this tank and the other tank, and I haven't noticed, it's not like I'm a fish psychologist or anything, but they haven't seemed to act any differently in this tank or the other tank than they did in my 55 that had maybe a little bit more flow with extra filtration and such. So some of the tetras I have in here include glow light tetras, which I believe started off in a Fluviflora, and then they kind of got a little too big, and they ended up in the 55, and then ended up in here. I don't have very many of them left. I have at least one of them left. Something else I have in here are brass tetras, and I had originally gotten them for the Fluviflex. They got a little bit bigger than I anticipated, just because I hadn't kept them before, and I thought they'd be happier in the 55, and then they ended up in here also. I also have some red-eye tetras in here. They're really interesting. They get a lot bigger than I thought they would too. I think they were originally in the 55, like I bought them for the 55. I think they just kind of caught my eye, and I picked up a school of them. Also have some endlers in here. I have some endler females in here. That's a fish I've had in a whole lot of different aquariums. It's usually what I start my aquariums off with. I have a number of cory cats in here, and those cory cats were actually bred by one of my friends, and he gave me a whole bunch of them, and they came from the 55 too. They were only in the 55, and they're now in here. They're ones I'd really like to move downstairs. They're kind of big for cory cats. I'm not sure exactly what species they are, because I didn't buy them in the store. They're pretty plain Jane cory cats, real skittish in here, I've noticed. I think their numbers have depleted to the point where they're probably not as comfortable as they should be. I probably should get a few more of them. I have a pearl gourami in here too. That's a really cool fish. It's quite a bit bigger than everything else in here, but they're pretty peaceful overall. Very skittish. Doesn't like to come out while I'm sitting so close to the aquarium, so I'll have to get a good shot of him later. What else? Who else is in here? I've got a really cool red bristlenose pleco that's very difficult to catch out. I threw a pleco cave in here, and he's been loving that. It is a male, so I'd love to get a good shot of it. It's got some bristles. Finally, for some reason, every time I buy one of these things as a baby, it ends up being female. And I think that's about it. It's kind of a mishmash tetra tank with a few other oddball fish thrown in. All refugees from other tanks and stuff. Oh, and of course, I've got another probably 1,000 cherry red shrimp in here too. Since I moved the bigger rainbows downstairs, I noticed their population has kind of exploded. I didn't even realize there were very many in here at all. I think I probably added a few more in because I had a bunch in the dirted 55 when I brought it over here. But now that I've added those things in here too, their population has really exploded, and I've got a whole lot of them. A whole lot of people have asked me about the canister filter since I opened it up, and then I of course set it up on this tank for the Owasa. The specific model number escapes me, but I guess it's right here. Wow, look at that. I think I'll eventually do a longevity review. Like, I'd like to keep at least a year and kind of experience everything that you would experience your first year with it. But I'll do my quick breakdown review of it now so far. So one thing I like about it is, like the last filter I had in here, you can pull the pre-filter out, and this one has like a row of sponges. I find that they get kind of clogged really quick. But again, I've got this big piece of driftwood in here, and it's a Malaysian driftwood. If you remember in my last video, I talked about how Malaysian driftwood sloughs off a ton of wood and really can make a mess in any filter. It's definitely doing a job on this one. I'd be really interested to see how that works. Like, I'd really like to take that filter downstairs and put it on the 27-gallon or something like that. Even though that tank is doing really good with the Fluval filter that's on it right now, and maybe I shouldn't fix what isn't broken. But I'm not sure. If I end up replacing this tank, maybe I'll put that one on whatever I replace this with. But that's coming up in a little bit. So anyway, the sponge filters, they're really easy to get to and clean out, and I like that. I like that a whole lot in this thing. But because of that, and because of, you've got to go vertical with it a little bit, I've left my hoses a little bit longer than I should have. In fact, I don't think I trimmed them very much at all. And I think that was a mistake on my part. There's a reason why you want to get them sort of, those hoses pretty taut, from down here to up here. I left mine like a little extra long so I could pull it all the way out and without actually disconnecting them, which I think was probably a mistake. The reason I say so is recently I did a full cleaning of this filter where I pulled it completely apart. So I went through the whole filter and I rinsed off the biomedia with water from the tank. And just kind of made sure that the debris was free, cleaned up all the sponges and stuff inside, like the internal sponges. It's got sponges in the trays too, which were completely clogged up with this wood and all the other stuff that develops in there. The way I laid it out seemed to work, as the biological stuff wasn't terribly dirty, but it did need a good rinsing out. Anyway, long story long, I put the filter back together and I was having a lot of trouble siphoning the water back in. In fact, what seemed to work better is disconnecting the return and actually sucking on it, which is gross. Sucking on it and just kind of getting the water to fully siphon down in there. I couldn't get the pump to work at all, but I think that has to do with the way the hoses are, like the length of hose is too long and it kind of droops down. So one of my next projects, if I'm going to keep it on here for much longer, probably one of my next projects is going to be to shrink, tighten the length of those hoses down, get them to the appropriate size, and maybe try that. The only other thing that I've noticed is that if this thing gets too clogged, I'll get a clicking sound, like you'll hear a little bit of a rattle from this tank. Even when it's bad, it hasn't been like terribly pronounced, but this is like literally my bed is feet from this aquarium. So any kind of sound I hear in the night when it's really, really super quiet and stuff can get annoying. 99.9% of the time I don't hear anything from it, and usually what I do is I'll go through and I'll pull those sponges out, I'll replace them, maybe clean out the old ones real quickly and put them away. I've got 2 sets of sponges with that. I definitely recommend if you buy that filter, get both sets of sponges. It just makes really quick cleaning like that possible. Usually I'll replace the sponges, kind of get the water going and stuff, and then it's fine. So I think the rattling is just like when the water flow just gets too low. Another thing to remember with this particular filter is that it's a low flow filter. It has a big capacity for biological, but the flow is really, really small. I haven't seen any downside to that in the tank. But a few of these fish probably enjoy a little bit higher water flow, so I'll probably I'm looking around to see maybe if I'll include something to kind of help move the water around in here. Not necessarily a supplemental filter, but maybe a power head or something just to kind of increase the flow in this tank. And that kind of brings me to my last subject, which is longevity of aquariums. There are a couple of things to consider. I haven't had any of these problems, or not a lot of these problems, knock on wood. But they're all kind of these like scenarios that I've heard about and I'd like to avoid. If you've got an opinion on that, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your opinion. Or I like to hear politely stated opinions. Those are always welcome. So one thing that comes up a lot, you'll hear a lot about, is old tank syndrome, which is where the plants just start dying. You'll see stuff like the plants will start dying, the water just won't go clear anymore. It's really difficult to keep the aquarium balance right. A lot of people have algae problems because the plants aren't taking up the nutrients like they used to. That's an issue I'm not really having in here. Well, I'm kind of not having in here. I've noticed my Anubias. I've had this Anubias coviphilia, which is this really huge plant. It's grown into the top of this thing, and it's kind of been running around. I've got some segments of it in the back, and then I've got another type of Anubias back here in the back too, with like the longer, thinner leaves. I don't remember the species of that one. But at one point it sort of dominated this tank. It was really huge on both sides, and it was the big plant in here. Over the years I've trimmed it a number of times. A lot of it ended up in the 210 and other tanks I've had. But I started noticing like some brown rot, and it seemed like it was kind of dying out, and I thought that was really unusual. I've never seen that on Anubias. I've seen Anubias melt before, but usually they'll be specimens that I get from the store. Like I'll get them in a little pot and I'll bring them home and I'll try to plant them, and I'll discover that they've been grown, at the water line and not even really suited for underwater. So if the conditions aren't perfect, they'll just completely melt away. That's not the case with these. I mean, these plants have been growing in this aquarium for literally years and years, and then just suddenly kind of have a problem. I've noticed a lot of these plants too. These plants used to be very, very thick, and these are a type of crypt, probably like a green Wendetti or something like that. This used to be really thick and lush, and it's gotten very, very thin over the years. Now, one thing that had happened too is I put duckweed in here to kind of help balance some things out, and because a lot of the fish really seem to like it, especially the shrimp. Shrimp really love that stuff. But at times it got a little thick, and I didn't address it soon enough, and I think it got so thick it sort of choked out the light. Plus, I have a fairly small light on here. I have a Pecktec Planet Plus, the same light I have on my 20-gallon. I've added another supplemental light, but that's been pretty recently, and that's kind of why it's so bright here in the front. You're getting a little bit of a glare right here. And that's actually a little small nano aquarium light. It's not even the full length of this thing. But I like that it adds a little bit of, I was worried that maybe they were just kind of getting choked out because it didn't have quite enough light here in the front. And I've added that just to kind of supplement it and see what happens. Another thing I've done is I've thrown some root tabs in here to kind of help with that. I think root tabs, if your soil is deficient, like if the plants have finally eaten everything that they can eat out of the soil, root tabs can definitely be something to kind of keep the ball rolling. I do have a favorite brand of root tabs, and that's the Flourish ones. A lot of root tabs seem to do, even the DIY ones, seem to do okay. These seem to work really well though. They're little black tablets, and they just kind of get pushed into the soil, and then they affect an area, I think it's, what does it say? They affect an area about 4 to 6 inches. And I kept one out of here just to show you guys. So you can spread those around your tank, and a lot of times they really help. Especially, I've talked about sword plants that really like the tabs. Those tabs, Vesuvius swords and plants like that really go nuts for them. But a lot of the plants in here really look rough. I mean, I've got another type of Java fern in here. I've got a bunch of kind of mix and match plants, things that have come from other tanks. I've got a few plants that came from the 5-gallon I brought home from work when I got furloughed. This has a mishmash of plants. A lot of them aren't doing that great. Like, I could zoom in and kind of show you, but this is definitely not my tank I'm super proud of right now. It's just kind of there, and I wanted to talk about its issues. Something else to consider. Okay, this is a glass tank with silicone edges, and I'm looking at the silicone, and it's a little scary. I think it's probably okay. I'm not sure the longevity of silicone tanks though, and every year that you keep it, it's another year where you're kind of you're just hoping that they'll have no issues. I'm a little nervous even talking about it because I don't want to call out to the universe for another issue, but I have seen some nightmare scenarios, even with experienced fish keepers. Some of my friends and stuff, I've seen they go from a gentle leak or just a complete rupture. If this were a smaller tank, I probably wouldn't be so concerned, but this is a large tank. It's directly above my living room. On the second floor tanks should get more consideration maybe than first floor tanks, because you're going to affect 2 parts of your home. So I'm especially mindful of this tank, and I'm always keeping an eye on it. There are other issues too. A lot of times when I replace a tank, you've heard me complain about scratches and stuff like that before. Eventually you'll screw up when you're cleaning the glass on one of these and scratch it. And if it happens bad enough or in enough times and in obvious places, actually this one seems to be pretty good. I've done a pretty good job of cleaning it try to only use credit cards up here when I can, like old plastic cards or, you know, sponges and that sort of thing. That's another thing that can inspire you to go ahead and break down a tank after it's been up for a long time. Another thing is just boredom. You just get tired of cleaning or taking care of a particular tank, especially if it starts to go south. Like, I've had a few tanks that have been okay and haven't been like weren't that old and didn't have a lot of scratches or anything like that, but eventually I just decided that they weren't worth pursuing. Like, I didn't enjoy the aquascape that much. I didn't think that much about it. This is another tank my wife really likes, but I think she really liked it because the rainbows were in here. And now that they're gone, I think I might have an opportunity to maybe switch this out for something else. I'd really love to use this stand and put a 40-gallon breeder on here, but this is actually only 30 inches long. So that's about the same width as a 20-gallon. And a 40-gallon breeder is, I think, 36 inches long. So this stand's not quite big enough. But it'd be really neat to kind of break this down, take these plants, stick them in the 210. Just with stick all the plants in there. Put all the fish in the 27-gallon and maybe a couple of other tanks around here and set something else up. So I'm currently in the market for maybe another replacement for this tank. I'd like to get that done this year. I'm not sure if I'll have the disposable income to take care of that, but we'll see. With any luck, like the issues that we're having, the reason we're all staying at home that I cannot say on YouTube without getting demonetized, hopefully that'll all go away soon and we can kind of get back into some normalcy, which is me buying things and showing you on the internet. That being said, this tank has made me a little bit nervous. I have no leaks. I have no reason to believe. I just don't want to go too much longer with this tank without just swapping it out. I mean, really, if the substrate's not growing plants on its own anymore, I could really, if nothing else, I could replace this with another version of the same tank, redo another aquascape, and maybe come up with something really beautiful. Here's the thing is, I've got enough supplies. I've got a whole bunch of supplies downstairs. So I've got enough rocks and wood and substrate and everything else to make another tank. It'd just be the tank itself that I'd have to get. I even have lights. I have all kinds of different kinds of lights and other things too. I'm kind of all set up to do another tank. I've got another one downstairs. It'd be maybe a little small to replace this one. Maybe I'd like to do something a little bit bigger than that for this one. I'm not sure either. My wife wants to redo all the carpets up here, so really maybe it wouldn't be a good time to put another big tank like a 40-gallon up. 20 gallons, 27 gallons, something like that. I could drain that and move it in someplace else and without it being too big a hassle. Getting up and down stairs is kind of tricky with those big aquariums, and I really dreaded taking the 55 down, and this one's going to be even worse because it's just awkward as hell to carry. That being said, I carry this empty upstairs on my own, but I was like a decade younger. Okay, folks, I'm going to leave it there. There's only a couple of aquariums that I haven't shown you, and that's basically the two specs. One of them is definitely getting broken down, and the other one is still holding my king beta and looking good. I'm actually looking at it right now. I was hoping to move him over soon to the new tank. The new 10-gallon tank that I set up not too long ago, right at the beginning of the year, has kind of gone up and down. It looked great, now it's looking terrible. Then I've cleaned it up and it looked a little bit better, and it's starting to look terrible again. It's one of those new tank things that kind of like just breaks your heart for a couple of months until things start to balance out and look right. But it's definitely a work in progress. We'll probably revisit that in the next couple of days. Might need to go through and replant some things, pull some stuff out, and clean it up a little bit in there and see if we can get it looking right. I think it's probably safe to bring the king beta into it, but honestly, he doesn't seem to mind this 5-gallon. He's got his little place where he sits. He's got his little routine in there. So I'm not in a huge rush to move him out. I'd like to send out a huge shout out to my Patreons this week, especially Tracy, who restocked my San Pellegrino. Thank you so much. What a funny and surprising thing to get in the mail. And it is tasty. Thank you, Tracy. But a huge shout out to all of you. I really appreciate your help. We're continuing to move along. We're actually doing okay right now. The government has come through with a little bit of money, and between that and the Patreon and what little bit I make from ad revenue on this, I think we're going to be all right. So far anyway, hopefully that continues. On the health front, I haven't smoked in weeks, and I miss it terribly. Or vaped, anyway. Same thing. I've been trying my best to eat better, or like eating at home all the time automatically is a little bit better, but I've been trying to eat better in general. Slowly working exercise into my daily routine. That hasn't been a huge thing for me beyond walking and stuff. But now that I got some extra time in the morning and I'm not rushing off to work, I figure why not. So I've been working on that. Really hopeful and positive about the future. I think things are going to get better for all of us very soon. Right now, at least, we're spending more time together, and that's something I've been wanting to do also. I love all you guys. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. Right after this, a delicious San Pellegrino beverage break. Oh yeah. What seemed to work best was disconnecting the side that brings the return. These seems to be pretty cool though. They're little black tabulets. Blah, 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 blah.